Welcome to the Get in the Fight podcast. My name is Nate Whitson, and I'm the founder of Get in the Fight Ministries and our exclusive online fight club for Christian men. Everything we do here is dedicated to helping Christian men become the men that God meant for them to be. So if you're looking for helpful content and conversations that can help you to grow and become the man that God made you to be, then you're in the right place. But before we get started, please do me a huge favor and be sure to subscribe, click the like button, and then leave us a 5-star review. Doing that helps us to reach more men who are looking for content just like this. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our mission and how to get involved or how to join the Fight Club, then head on over to getinthefight.club. That's getinthefight.club and learn more today. But without further ado, it's time to get in the fight. So let's go. Hey everybody, welcome to the Get in the Fight podcast. I'm super excited for you to get to meet Todd Wilson today, somebody that I was very fortunate to see a couple times now at some homeschool conventions and conferences that we've been a part of, and I'm really grateful to have Todd here. So we're going to jump right to it. I want to ask as many questions as we can and get to as much stuff as we can here from a guy that has conversations for men for a living, right? And maybe not just for men, but I know that the conversations in particular for dads and for fathers is going to be super relevant and helpful for you today. So I'm really excited for today's conversation. But I met Todd back in the spring and had a conversation to say, hey, maybe you'd be interested to come on, and grateful he's here. You're going to see, Todd wears many hats. He's an author of many books. One of them is called Help, I'm Married to a Homeschooling Mom. He's got an official book of homeschooling cartoons and then many other resources that I'll introduce you to later. He's a dad, a writer, an amazing and super funny conference speaker. He's a former pastor. He's a guy that is a favorite at speaking conferences across the country, I think because he's just very funny, but he's also just very honest and very real. He's a guest at times with Focus on the Family and writes articles that are sometimes in Christianity Today, has a weekly column called The Family Man Weekly, has a website, a podcast, and all kinds of things. But Todd is also married to his wife, Debbie. They have 8 children, and they spend a lot of months traveling the country, encouraging moms and dads. So Todd, thank you so much for jumping on and being here with me today.
It is my pleasure.
Yeah, how amazing that you get to just be a dad who travels with his family and works his way across the country, building memories and encouraging people. Like, what a really cool thing that you get to do.
It is a cool thing. I mean, something that I didn't anticipate. But it's been an amazing byproduct. In fact, it has been the glue that holds our family together. We don't travel like as much as we used to when my kids were little, because now they're married and
Yeah.
they have grandkids. And now my kids, when we travel, they don't want to go because they want to be with their nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters.
That's right.
So we're kind of in a transition, trying to figure out how this looks going forward. And I'm not like this Mr. Planner guy, so I don't really write it down. I just walk the path, and I'm like, whoa, we're not on that path again. So I wish.
If you're like me, a lot of guys, we don't really know what we're doing most of the time until we check with our wife. We're like, oh, we're doing Christmas.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
But Todd, tell our audience a little bit about you, just kind of the quick run through of how did you get to this point? Tell us a little bit about you and your story.
I grew up in a Christian family, had amazing parents, and really I attribute a lot of that to them. I mean, of course, God was in the midst of all of it, but I had a mom who cared about family. I had a dad, even though he was saved about when I was in junior high. I mean, he cared about his family. I mean, he made choices. Coming from a dad who was terrible, he was a great dad, is a great dad. In fact, I'm going to pick him up here in just a little bit. But, I've been married to my wife for 33 years.
Wow.
It's been an amazing ride. We have 8 children. Never anticipated that. I thought, my wife came from a family of 4. I came from a family of 4. And we thought, family of 4 kids, that's the number. But somehow God said, moved us in a different direction. And our house is loud. Our house is chaotic. It's just, and now the 4 oldest are married. we're expecting number 7, 8, 9 grandchild already. And actually, I mean, really, we have 2 grandchildren that could be born in the coming week or weeks for today, I guess. And so life feels full. I didn't set out to think, oh, I want to start a men's ministry. I was a pastor for about 10 years. And in fact, I don't even really like the word sometimes, men's ministries. I just wanted to encourage dads because I saw all the pressures to choose the wrong thing. Everybody rewards, success, lots of money, lots of shiny things. And that's the only thing that God doesn't even care about.
Yeah.
And especially as dads, and we have these diamonds, I don't like the idea of exchanging them for stones, things that aren't worth anything. So that's what we started. We started Family Man Ministries. Our little slogan was reminding dads of what's most important. I can remember when we started, my wife's like, that doesn't even say anything. Should we define what's most important? And I'm like, honey, everybody knows it. All dads know what's most important. I don't have to define it.
Yeah.
So we kept it and we just keep doing it. And it's super simple. We have lots of books and, we speak, but it's the same thing. I'm just pointing dads down the right path, the path that brings joy and is hard and, and it just gets better. As my kids have gotten older, the laughter's more hilarious. The arguments are greater. The emotion is greater. The chaos is greater. And we go to bed feeling more exhausted than we ever have. But it is so, so good.
I love what you're saying and what you do. And I'm curious, have you found over the years, like, I get this sense, I think I'm one of these guys that feels like I'm waking up finally. And maybe it's just my stage of life. I'm 46 at this recording. But in the last couple of years, I didn't set out to do a men's ministry. I do financial planning for a living, but I have this sense of urgency. Again, that maybe it's just because I'm in my 40s, but I feel like it's bigger. I feel like men across the world are waking up to some of the things that are happening. And I guess I'm curious your take. Do you feel like dads are waking up more so right now when you're talking to them across the country? Or do you feel like maybe it's the same as it's always been? Is it any different now or no?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's any different. I think there are those awakenings in men. I mean, Promise Keepers was one of those awakenings. And really what was a motivator for me was back in the day, before I did what I did, we were having little kids, and occasionally when the kids were in bed, I would turn on a PBS documentary. And I'm kind of fascinated by people who are good at what they do. So if you're the world's best violin maker, I think that's, I don't like anything about cooking, but I like to watch those who are the best.
Yep.
And they would interview these, and some of them were weird, like Weird Al Yankovic, the Polka King, and Billy Graham, and really across the board, they would kind of get to the end, almost without exception. They would get to the end and they go, I really wasn't a very good dad. If I had to do it over, I think I would have spent a little more time in our family. So I think there is that awakening where a lot of people, like, I've not met a dad yet who doesn't want to be a good dad. But sometimes the voice is quieted, or like I didn't understand during the Promise Keepers movements, they would fill arenas with 50,000 guys. And I didn't understand why afterwards there wasn't a mass migration from the workplace, or people who just said, this job's terrible for my family, I'm quitting. Because I think we get to a point where we're like, yeah, I want to be this, but I'm not I can't take it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And so I do think I was just talking, we had a guy, did our podcast actually just a few minutes ago. And there was a guy on our show, and his name is Myson, and Myson, my son. And he was talking about his dad who had 10 kids. And for the first 4 children, he was number 5. The first 4 children, he wasn't a very good dad. He really was, a harsh disciplinarian. His older brother's probably, he says, it's like we have two different dads.
Mm.
But at my fifth child, he said he went like a month without a name. He didn't have a name even. And I'm like, that is rough. They called me the kid. And then his dad was just broken. And his dad changed. And he named his son my son.
Wow.
And he was just talking about that. And, and he's been an amazing dad. His dad has now 70 grandchildren.
Wow.
So I do think there are those awakenings. And that's why I'm like, when a guy comes up to me and says, hey, Todd, I really feel like I should ... I'm like, do it quick, because if you don't, you're going to get sucked back in. Because I've met a lot of those guys who have. So I don't know. I think there's always been, and even when you think about it, even when the Messiah came, the forerunner to the Messiah, the one who was supposed to get everybody ready, his job was to turn the hearts of the fathers to the sons and the hearts of the sons to their fathers. I think, this is my thought, that because that's the chain that moves the gospel along. It's supposed to be, these are to be on your heart, and you teach them to your children, who will teach them to their children. I think at those times, like at that time, there was a break in the chain, like the father. And so, you have to put the chain back together so you can, it's the forerunner to the gospel. And I think even now, I kind of feel like, there would be some guys like, why don't you share the gospel? Why don't you do it? And I'm like, because I'm getting people ready for the gospel.
Yeah.
Just by turning the hearts of their dads to their kids, because somehow God uses that and works through that. So, I don't know if I answered your initial question. Maybe we've always been this way.
Yeah.
Where we've always kind of felt like now's the time. But it doesn't take very long before that cools down again.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're back to normal.
Yeah, it feels like, and maybe this is just our generation of it, but like it feels like the push for our society to affirm everything that kind of opposes us, is so strong that I feel like it's almost like, human nature. We don't move until it hurts bad enough.
Right.
I feel like there's a little bit of that maybe going on where everybody's like, whoa, where did all this darkness come from? It's just been coming and coming and coming. But we're finally waking up to it and saying, wow, if I don't do something quickly, it may be too late. And so it certainly feels that way. But it makes me think, though, of your ministry and of what you're doing, that just to reach the hearts of fathers and to help men become the men that God meant for them to be. That's kind of our slogan.
Right.
That God has an idea for men. Like, let's find out what that is for you. And to your point, let's go do that quickly. If God is prompting you to move, let's get to that thing quickly. What do you think? I've got my ideas on this, but what do you think it is? Like, what do you think is at the heart of keeping men out of the fight? This is called Get in the Fight, this ministry, because I recognize that I was like, I don't know if this is your church or not, but at my church, and I think every other church, guys will go at church and be like, hey, Todd, how you doing today? Doing good. How about you? Doing good. Meet the next guy. How you doing today?
Right.
Doing good. Doing good. Everybody's doing good at church until you talk to them, and it's like you find out like they're not in the fight at all. Like we're just going to church. And so what do you feel like is the cause of that? What do you think is keeping men from being fully alive in Christ and fighting this fight?
Because it is hard. Because it is a fight,
Yeah.
And especially, in your relationship with Christ, I mean, that one's harder for me because I don't know why. I mean, because he loves us so acceptingly, I don't know why we don't embrace that. But I know as a dad, I know guys will say, well, I tried and they just didn't care. And I'm like, duh, of course they didn't care. That's what kids do.
Yeah.
You do the things that are good for them and they go, you don't love me. You don't try. Right. And you're like, fine, or you have children who are selfish. You have a spouse who, doesn't respond because, the way you think they should respond. And it's hard.
Yeah.
But I think that's the beauty of what you do and what I'm doing, what so many others have done, that I think we need to be real. because I think there are a lot of guys who think, well, you don't know what it's like, everybody else does, but Nate and Todd, theirs is easy, which is not true. I will talk about a dad right now on this show, and then I'll go upstairs and I'll get my 17-year-old son in tears because I'm just mean, or I'll go up and I'll say to my wife something mean,
right.
Right after we've talked about loving our wives,
right. Right.
and because that's what we do. And I just think, I always think it's interesting that when I share my successes, and we send a weekly email out to lots of people, when I share my success, I'm like, I was such a good dad this week. Nobody responds. I mean, one guy will go, way to go, Todd, but if I say, oh man, I was so mean to my kids, I said these hateful words, the dads come out of the woodwork and say, oh, that was just like me.
Yes.
And it's not this thing where we say, oh, good, so Todd's like me, now I can be a bum. We're all bums.
That's right.
So maybe we could just stay in the fight together. And that's kind of encouraging to me, to hear that it was hard for you, because we think that we'll encourage people to get in the fight when we give them lofty words and we share, these 4 things to do this. And really, I think we just encourage them when we prop them up and we're covered in blood and, we're like, yeah, I hate my kids too. Well, let's stay in the game, And I like that. I like that. So.
Yeah. It's funny. I do a weekly podcast and blog as well. And yesterday, somebody in my community said, oh, wow, this blog post on how the gospel changes parenting is so good. And I just stole everything from Paul David Tripp. It's not like I had no good idea. I said, here's what we're supposed to do. Right. It's just total plagiarism. It's like, here's what he said, and he's really good at what he does.
Right.
But it was funny because they were saying, wow, this is really great. And I'm thinking exactly what you said. Like, I'm such a terrible dad today at this point, this point, and this point, It's like this weird spot to be here because we just want to encourage men. And at the same time, we just have so much work to do. But I don't know about you. What I like about the challenge of speaking it out loud and saying, here, go do this, be this kind of man, is it's really just mostly helpful for me. It keeps me on course to trying to be that man that I'm supposed to be. And so
I agree.
I feel very unqualified to say like, hey, I'm going to lead a men's ministry. And I bet you feel similar, but it's just like, but we need so badly these voices in our society. And I think men are hungry for it. I think they're hungry for being, like you said, I've never met a dad who hasn't wanted to be a better dad,
Yeah. And I think, I think they want that, a standard bearer, someone who can, when the Apostle Paul said, kind of follow my example, I don't even think I could ever say that. Like, follow my example because I've got it right. But, I think people do like the example of, another dad. Like when I say, oh man, I had my kid in tears, and then 10 minutes later, I went back and I apologized.
Yeah, there you go.
And I said, you don't deserve to have a dad like me. He said, I love you so much. And then I say, hey dad, how about you? You got a relationship you need to mend? Go do it because you're dad. And there's something kind of comforting, like, yeah, Todd blew it. I blew it. I can do it. Todd did it,
Absolutely.
And I like that. And I love when guys will say to me, Todd, I was doing something and I heard the Holy Spirit say, just do that. And he goes, and the Holy Spirit sounded just like you.
So great.
So funny.
So great. What do you think? You mentioned your motto or your tagline about what matters most, helping to remind dads or encourage dads to do what matters most. What are some of those things? Like, it's a simple catchphrase, but what are some of those things?
For me, it's the relationships. It's relationships with people. Like right now, I don't know if you can hear it over this microphone, but we have my 3 grandchildren who live right next door. They're upstairs and I can hear one of them crying, like I'm dying crying. Not I'm hurt crying, but someone has crossed me crying,
Yep.
And I love that. But the thing I want to get right are the relationships, the relationship with my spouse and the relationship with my children, the relationship with my grandchildren, and even I'll tell you, we're at a new crossroads because my kids live close My oldest lives right next door. I have another son right across the street. My daughter and son, they're both married, and they live 10 minutes away across the street from each other.
Wow.
And so, we're babysitting all the time. All the time. And my wife will say, I just feel like, I got to have some time for not me, but I just can't get anything done because I've got kids all the time. And I've got these, and, almost every night they're like, hey, Dad, can you watch, Cohen? Because, and it's hard. And there would be a lot of grandparents who would say, oh, yeah, my kids are all done. I'm moving to Florida.
Right.
Eh, honestly, I say this kindly, they're dopes, because, and I'll tell my wife, honey, we're going to babysit till we're dead. But this is what's best. It is what's best. Parenting, as a dad, I want to get the relationship with my children right. I don't care if I blow the ministry part and I never grow. I don't care if I don't sell any books. That pays for things. But even if we're destitute, I want to get the relationship right. So to me, there are no even other things. When I say reminding dads of what's most important, that's what's most important. The relationship with your child. That might be in doing certain things. Like I was on an interview about a week ago, and the guy asked me, so what really gets your tank what really tanks you up? And I'm like, I got an email from a guy who said, hey, Todd, I'm the biggest skinflint there ever was. He goes, but, the ice cream truck went by and I could hear the music and I'm like, the kids are going to hear it. They heard it. And I heard your voice, the Holy Spirit, say, stop the ice cream truck. And he goes, we got that terrible ice cream that cost a fortune.
Yep.
And to me, that's what's most important. Not the ice cream, not the spending the money, but those kids take that memory forever. And really, that kind of love that dad used on his kids is irresistible. You can't escape that. You want you want to be with your dad. You want to love what he loves. So really it helps them in a future relationship with God by you as a dad stopping the ice cream truck.
Yeah.
And getting some Smurf Pops.
That's right.
For $12 a piece.
I think
that's hard for me.
That's your next T-shirt. Stop the ice cream truck. Just
exactly.
That should be
exactly with a Smurf Pop. It doesn't even look like a Smurf.
That's right.
And it was frozen in China 4 years ago.
That's right. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the conversation so far. And if you are, please do us a huge favor and be sure to subscribe, click the like button, and then leave us a 5-star review. It only takes a few seconds to do this, but it makes a huge difference for us, and it helps us to reach more men who are looking for content just like this. Thanks so much for listening and helping us out. Now back to the show. Yeah, so tell us, I can think of a lot of guys in our community, obviously at different stages, but maybe what would you say to these different seasons of parenting? This is what's great about where you're at now, right? You can really speak to this huge range of seasons. Can talk just when you think of the seasons of parenting and just where dads are at different stages, what encouragement do you give to help them have that perspective of seasons now that you know a little bit?
Well, that's a great question. I feel like I'm entering the winter season or then I die,
It's over.
But here's the thing about these seasons, and there are seasons. I remember when my kids were little, I longed for, lust might be the right word, a nap every Sunday afternoon. I started thinking about it on Wednesday. And I knew if I could just get in, when everybody was laying down, if I could just get in a little nap, that would be so great. I did it every Sunday because I was always tired. I don't take a nap anymore because I don't need a nap. I remember when my kids were little, my wife and we would watch a video. We had a little tiny television in our room. It was I bet it didn't even have a 13-inch screen. And we would watch it we couldn't get any reception, so we'd have to watch a video. But we would lay in bed and we'd watch a video while you were sleeping or some kind of romantic chick flick kind of thing. And We would do that in the winter a couple times a week, because we'd put my kids to bed. They'd go to bed at 8.
Right.
I haven't done that with my wife in 10 years, and so there are those seasons. But here's the deal about the seasons: they pass in the blink of an eye. And I know there are dads with little kids right now who think I'm always going to be surrounded by little kids. We're always going to be changing diapers. That is not true. That is a lie. It is going to be over before you know it. I mean, my youngest right now is 15 years old.
Mm.
And I think, how can that be?
Mm-hmm.
I just thought we would be traveling the country in our RV and forever. And we'd just do these family things. And, my house would always be full. My house is always full, even now. But I just thought, these little kids, and now they've got parents who, who are their parents who have 6-year-olds, and I'm like, wow. And so it won't be long before I am an old man, and I'll be having great grandchildren and all these things. And in fact, I just choked myself up the other day thinking about how my oldest, how he used to be excited and, be a little kid and dress up in army clothes and loved all the insignias. And now he's 30 years old and, expecting their 4th child. And
where did it go? Right.
I'm like, so these seasons, there are seasons, but they go quickly. So,
yeah.
Even if you're in a sweet spot right now, enjoy it because it's going to pass.
Yeah.
But I will say the seasons get better.
Mm.
One of the things I love when we go to a restaurant. We'll go to a Mexican restaurant. And by the way, it gets more expensive because you end up paying it all and all the time. And I'm okay with that. I can remember my dad saying, I said, Dad, you don't have to buy my dinner. And he'd say, oh, Todd, who do you spend your money on? I said, my kids. He goes, that's where I like to spend my money too. Now, I mean, I'm gonna pick him up here in a little bit. He's gonna offer to pay my lunch, and I'm like, of course you can pay my lunch. I'm tired of paying for kids. I'll take it.
I'm your kid. Pay for my lunch.
I'm your kid. But I love it when we go to a restaurant. And since I'm loud, I always sit down at the end by like the kids because my wife likes to be in the middle so she can hear everything, and she doesn't talk as loud as I do. And I love it. I'll sit down there, and everybody's talking, and I'm just watching them. And I know that it's just like this really good feeling just washes over me. Like, my kids don't need me. They're going to be okay without me.
Yes.
They're going to continue to be a family when I'm gone, and they're going to continue to take what God is in their heart and pass it to their kids. We're going to pass it to their kids. And it really is generational, and it is good. So
absolutely.
So, but it goes so quick, and it's shocking.
Yeah. We started our homeschool class, start school today. And so on the first day of school, we always go do breakfast with the kids. Awesome. I've got 4 girls. And so we went and had breakfast at Cracker Barrel. It's kind of our thing. We talk about like, what are you most excited about? And they always say being done.
Yeah, exactly. Not doing school.
Not doing this. But can I have some more syrup, please? But yeah, we were talking about that. And one of my youngest is in 4th grade. And I was just talking about like, gosh, I remember 4th grade so well. Like it was yesterday. For whatever reason, 4th grade was just a great year for me. And I'm looking at my youngest in the same way you're talking about these seasons. I was that kid, my youngest kid.
Right.
I remember it like yesterday, and it's just over.
Yeah.
Like, where does this go?
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a great reminder for men, for dads. What matters most is the relationship, and it goes fast. And don't wish it away, but embrace it. Be fully present with all the mess.
Yeah.
Tell me. Let's talk about the marriage aspect of these seasons, because I feel like the best gift we can give our kids is a strong marriage. That they see mom and dad who are in the fight for them, for each other, that they enjoy each other. Like, tell me a little bit about maybe how do we help men stay focused on their marriage during this crazy time? What's interesting, by the way, I'm going to pause and say to you, I have this in my mind of like, okay, when the kids are all gone, then we get the house back and it'll be quieter. It sounds like it may not be. That we might just be babysitting. So maybe that's not true.
It's not true. I mean, I know other parents have that, and we know some friends but for our house, it is ramped up. It's just like the opposite of what that was going to be. Now we have 15 people in
Right.
our house for
Right.
dinner 3 times a week, and it's crazy. But that's the thing about marriage is that there are seasons of that as well,
Hmm.
and I said we just had a guy on our podcast, and he was saying how, you're kind of, you do things for a while and then all of a sudden it all changes. Like he was saying, what's hard for him right now is that he has a 19-year-old son, and they went through some struggles there. And he said, so the teenage years were hard for him.
Hmm.
Because I asked him, what do you like best, and what's the hardest part? And he said, teenage years are the hardest for him. And, I know that when my kids were little, I used to be this, I was arrogant is probably the right word, even though I never said it like this. People, if they had problems in their marriage, if they had problems with their kids, I would say things like this in my heart. This is so terrible. I'd say, well, if they would just do it God's way, they wouldn't have these problems. And I really kind of believed it.
Right.
And I thought, and then, my kids got a little bit older. And now my kids, some of the things they're dealing with are a little bit weightier. Now my wife's looking at me like, why aren't you solving this? Why are you never do anything. You always leave it all up to me, all the burden on me. So now, why aren't you the spiritual leader? Why did you let him go to youth group? Why did you let him watch Disney movies? Why didn't you make him, all these things?
Yes.
And, and now she's looking at me differently, and now our kids are staying up later, so we don't watch the videos in bed anymore. And now we don't connect like we often did, and, and then she's going through some physical changes, and I respond in a bad way. And so now there are some hurts, and now marriage is hard.
Hmm.
But here's the thing, I think, is, being a dad is teaching your future sons and daughters how to love their future spouses. Because the deal is, your daughters are all going to marry 4 creeps.
No doubt.
And
You already know
and
these
they're gonna
guys. That's amazing.
I already know them. Yes. Some guy, he wrote me, he goes, is it okay if I hate the guy who's dating? I said, totally. I told one of the boyfriends, I'm like, I said, I hate you, but it's not because it's you. It's just
nothing personal.
just the guys in general. And he goes, even my son-in-law right now, he's still like, oh, Todd still probably hates me. So I let him believe that, and just because it's good. They should be a little afraid of you.
That's right.
But, your daughters are going to marry these guys. They're going to be madly in love, and they're going to have great adventures. And then they're going to hit some hard parts.
Hmm.
And now they're going to realize he was a creep or is a creep, or, even though nothing has changed.
Right.
And I want to show my kids how to stay married, even when it's hard. That's why I push. So, use the phrase how to have either a healthy or strong marriage. I'm getting close to thinking maybe the distinction shouldn't just be healthy and strong, even though there are, but maybe it's just you're married or you're not married, because if your wife, there are a lot of guys who's like, I haven't been close to my wife in decades, and I used to think, again, you could win her over by your charm, by your wit. But if your wife was abused as a child, that changes things. If you have if you've cheated on your wife, that changes things. If she's having hormonal things, that changes things.
Yep.
Or if you have hurts, it changes things. So it's not even fair to say, oh, well, you just need to do these things. And, sometimes I think for husbands, it's loving your wife even if they don't love you back.
Yep.
And that's a hard fight.
That's really good. That's really good.
And it is. I can remember, and my wife, I love my wife, and my wife loves me, but we demonstrate it different ways, And so I can remember early on in my marriage, I was talking to a pastor, and he was saying, well, I'll just pray that Debbie would be maybe a little easier. And this was years and years ago. And I kind of, it startled me. And I stopped him. I said, don't pray that. I said, would you pray that I will love my bride no matter what? And really, I don't do that just because I'm this amazing husband, because I'm not. If I'm a loser dad, I'm really a loser husband.
Right.
I do it because I want my boys to know how to love their wives no matter what. Because I know there will be a time where their wife will look at them and go, I don't like you anymore.
Yep.
And my boys are going to stay married because I've shown them how.
That's great.
And they'll keep loving. And I can remember, and I don't mean to ramble, but I can remember one time somebody's texting me and I don't even know what they're talking about. But I can remember one time, my son, I went in for my oldest son, and I said, we were talking about apologizing, because it's hard for him to apologize unless he is absolutely sure he's wrong. And he doesn't think he's wrong very often. I can remember one time we were like battling this out, and I said, I'm sorry, we forgive me. And he goes, yeah. And I said, I just paused. And I go, do you have something you want to say? and he said, do you think I did something wrong? I'm like, never mind. But I said to him, sometimes, Ben, you're going to have to apologize to your future wife before he was married, even when you don't feel like you were wrong, just because her feelings will be hurt.
Yep.
And he goes, Dad, I don't think I can do it. And it was about 2 years after they were married. And we're standing out in the yard, and he goes, Dad, sometimes you have to apologize, even when you're not right or wrong or whatever. And I'm like, kerching.
Yeah, there it is.
He's learned the lesson.
Yes.
But, he learned that from his dad, because I can remember him saying, Dad, that's not fair. Mom's too hard on you. She shouldn't be that way. And I can remember getting in his face and saying, I don't want you to take my side ever again. You can take her side if you want, but don't take mine, because I will love your mom no matter what. And, I did that for him.
Yeah.
And I did it because I said to my wife, I would love her no matter what. And I think that's what we need.
I love it.
Men who will love their wives no matter what. And I can remember standing in my garage praying to God, like, God, I will love her no matter, even if she shows me nothing back, I will love her. But can you change it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean that.
Yeah.
And really, honestly, that kind of love is hard to resist from a wife, unless a wife has been hurt.
Yeah.
And not necessarily by you, but by past and because our wives are fragile, frail vessels. The Bible says it, and I think they do get hurt more easily than us, by everyone else. And then they don't understand why you don't understand why they're hurt. And you're like, well, I don't see the big deal, and they're like, you're just like them. You're taking their side, and it is hard. It's hard being married.
Yep.
But it is so, so worth
it. As you're saying all of this, it reminds me, excuse me, of how the gospel changes parenting. Well, the gospel changes marriage as well. Like what you're describing is Christ's love for us when we don't deserve it is unfailing. And it's what does marriage teach us other than to grow up and to mature and to be more like him? And what a better vessel than marriage to teach you how to love somebody when all of these things that you're saying are so true. And we need to demonstrate that. In fact, there was a meme the other day that went around that said the new rich is having a mom and dad in the same home. Like over to your point of saying like that's the new wealthy. Like maybe not strong or healthy to your point, but like we aren't going anywhere. And I remember my parents saying that as kids. Like, look, we don't have it all figured out, but we're never divorcing. And they were like,
what a powerful thing. What a powerful thing. Because I know some parents who don't want their kids to see them fight.
Right.
And I'm like, I think you do them a disservice
Mhm.
because wouldn't it be a travesty if they got to the married and they go, well, my parents never fought,
Yep.
and or whatever. I think they need to see you argue, and then they need to see dads resolve it
Yeah.
and wives resolve it, and wives who go, I forgive you, because one day they're going to have to. And talking again about the power of this, one time I was at this men's leadership thing, everybody there, and there were about 30 guys. There were 30 guys there. They were all leaders of men's ministries,
Okay.
all of them. We're all sitting around a circle. They're just talking about different things. They're talking about their families, and then I asked the question. I said, "Hey, I got a question. You're talking." I said, "How many of your moms and dads stayed married, the whole time you were?" One by one, every single man put his hand up in the
Wow.
air.
Yeah.
And some of them said, well, my parents' marriage was really terrible. I mean, my dad, had an affair or two.
Mhm.
But I said, did they stay married? He goes, yeah, they did. And I'm like, could it really be that simple? That part of this thing that we hand our children for success is just by staying married.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that is
Yeah.
part of it anyway. And I don't think, people will say, oh, should I just stay married, for the good of my kids? And I'm like, yes, you should. And for the good of your grandchildren.
Yeah.
And does that mean everything's going to? No. But I think sometimes in the midst of staying married, God can work
Yep.
and do amazing things.
Yep. Have you ever experienced that maybe in your life where you've wanted to bail, you've wanted to get out of the fight, get out of the ring, and you stayed, right? Maybe not even in marriage, but just in life. And it's like you look back at this stage of our life and you just go like, there's many times that I've wanted to bail, but when I stayed, the reward of staying through the hardest things was so beneficial. You would never want to trade what has been gained from staying, because it's easy to go. But again, like when you see marriage as this thing from God that teaches us so much about who he is, the love of the Father towards us, it's way bigger, and it teaches us so much.
Yes. And I mean, there's a song, I think it's by David Baroni or someone like that. It's a Christian song, and it says 50 years from now. And it says, here's my attempt at singing. 50 years from now, what will we remember? And the chorus is, if we walk away from this, what will we have missed 50 years from now? And it's just so powerful. And because the song is, we're going through this hard time, but if I walk away from it, will I miss grandchildren later with you and all these other things with you? And I remember to your question, wasn't to me mine, but I remember this guy, his name is Steve Lambert. He's up on a stage and he's got a big piece of paper and he's got a big marker and he's writing all these things in his life. So he writes down, I came to know Christ at this age. And then he puts a cross, and then he and his wife stick figures. We got married and we had these 2 kids. And then he said, at this point, he goes, this is where I made the biggest mistake in my life, and I had an affair. And he wrote that out. And then he said, and then after that, we got to go to our children's weddings. We have these grandchildren, and he's writing all these. And he writes out this wrong thing. And he said, had we stopped then, and he just rips the page right off and all that other stuff. He wads up. He goes, we would have missed all that. And,
That's powerful.
and that is a powerful, powerful thing. And I think, and if you're the wife and you've gone through, or if you're the husband listening right now, and your wife has cheated on you, it's a lot easier to say and describe than to go through. But I do know when Jesus said it is not good for a man and woman to be torn apart, even after all that, is it still best to remain, even if, yes, it is best to remain.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, you have a stay married hashtag mantra that and obviously this is like a central part of what you're saying. And, and again, like what I think people love about you is just the honesty. Like you just speak it. Like, yeah, marriage is hard, and yeah, you have a platform to talk about staying married. And people look at you,
Yeah.
I'm sure, and just say, "Well, this guy obviously he's happy. He's got all these kids. It's like everything must be
Right.
golden, right? Everything must be golden there."
Yeah.
But I think what you present in your podcast and in your weekly columns and all the things that I watch and get to be a part of watching you do, it's just very honest. And I think we just so desperately need honest voices. We don't need church talk. There's a lot of guys in this ministry, and obviously just listening to our shows and things, they're very much more that guy who didn't grow up in the home where mom and dad stayed together. That's more of
Mhm.
the men in our community than not. And so a lot of them are just looking and saying like, where's the guy that sounds like me?
Right.
Because they're in
Yeah.
church thinking, how you doing? Doing good. How are you doing? Doing good. Everybody must be doing
Yeah,
good,
exactly.
you know?
Or when they do confess something, they'll say, "Oh, I just got all bent out of shape because they didn't have enough ketchup at McDonald's." And then you think, "That's it?
That's
That's all that you have to worry about?" But and even speaking to your point, because I know there are a lot of dads who don't have an example.
yep.
They have a bad example. You know, my dad's dad walked out on his family when he was a teenager. My dad, he was one of 5 children. I've never heard them mention the father's name.
Mm,
I've never heard my grandmother ever mention him.
wow.
I mean, and yet my dad was an amazing dad, and yet all that that man's my grandpa, I guess, all his children stayed married,
Mm,
you know, and my dad was a great dad and a great husband, and he broke the cycle.
yeah,
And so there is so much hope. It's not, again, not easy, but it's so worth it.
absolutely. There's so many other things. Maybe if you're willing down the road, maybe we'll try to do some more because there's so many other things I'd like to ask you.
Yeah,
But for
sure.
time's sake today, I want to wrap up here for you, and so you can go get your dad and he can buy you lunch.
I got to go pick up my dad. My dad's going to complain about how fast I drive. And he's like, he's like constantly looking at my speedometer. And I mean, I'm a slow driver. My wife will say, Todd never speeds. And he'll say, you better slow down around here, Todd. They're going to get you. And I'm like, Dad, I'm 58 years old. If I want to get a ticket, I'm going to get a ticket.
So great. Tell your dad we said hello. Hey,
Okay.
tell our audience real quick though, Todd, like where can they find you? Tell us a little bit about some of the stuff that you have for dads to encourage them in the fight.
Well, you can find us at familymanweb.com. We have a weekly podcast called The Family Man Show. You can find it wherever you get your podcast. We send out a weekly email. You can sign up for it. We've got lots of products over there. We've got t-shirts and some really cool hats. We've got books to encourage you. If you're a homeschooling family, we encourage homeschoolers as well. We have kind of a side of us that encourages homeschooling moms called the Smiling Homeschooler, and with the same .com, the smilinghomeschooler.com. And so, again, even in homeschooling, we just want to encourage moms to remember what matters most, which is the relationship, not men. And so that's kind of what we do. So you can find us there. If you're looking for something, I know it's not Christmas, but we've got some Christmas board games and that we produce. It's a great game called The Bethlehem. We got some other Christmas things to encourage you. And really excited because our You to Dad Daily Calendar, which is a yearly thing for us, comes out November 1st, is at the printer right now. We print a bunch of them, and lots of dads buy them for their friends, for their dad friends. And it's just a page a day. You rip off a page, and it's maybe the greatest tool I've ever made because it reminds you all those things you want to do. Like on a certain day, it'll say, tell your youngest child that you're proud of them.
Mm,
Or stop right now and text your wife and tell her you love her. Or maybe spend 10 seconds thanking God for being a dad.
great.
And some other things like that. So it's a powerful tool. You can't get them on our website yet, but they're going to be showing up real soon.
That's excellent. Yeah. And we'll try to put some links there for the guys there in show
That'd be
notes so that
great.
we can do that. Todd, would love what you're doing. Thank you for encouraging me and encouraging the dads that are out there. Keep doing what you're doing. And thank you for your time with us. And guys, look for Todd, follow his stuff, get into his weekly email and sign up for that. It's awesome stuff. And just encourage you guys listening just to be the dad that God meant for you to be, to get in the fight, to stay connected and just stay married, and the blessing will come.
Amen.
So go get in the fight, guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next podcast. Hey guys, thanks so much for being here today and listening to the show. Please be sure to head over to the website at getinthefight.club. And before you go, if you haven't already, please subscribe, click the like button, and leave us a positive 5-star review. It makes a huge difference whenever you do. Have a great day. Go get in the fight.